Ronald, you were previously mentioning the pyramid. I was talking about the top of this pyramid, 8,500 people. Could you tell us about how things operate up there nowadays?
Yes, certainly. These 8,500 people make use of a monetary system, a financial monetary system, which we refer to as money and banks, used in our daily lives. So, the mechanism they use is indeed a system in the shape of a pyramid. So you have the top of 8,000 to 8,500 people, then the layer under them. They have created an institution in 1930. This was done from the Netherlands called the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, with headquarters situated in Switzerland. They are the headquarters of the banks and of the financial system. The top 8,500 people gives orders to BIS in Basel, from which it propagates downward through the system to be executed. We know Basel from the Basel agreements. It went wrong with the banks and then we got Basel I, Basel II, Basel III. Some people have heard of the agreements or read about them in the newspaper. That's all about the BIS. So, as I just said, this came into existence in 1930, originating from the Netherlands. And already in 1931 was BIS recognized worldwide by basically all countries to be the headquarters of the financial world. Every central bank is a member of this BIS club. Which is a civil organization, not a governmental one, who have a headquarters agreement that describes in total what the BIS stands for. Its range of power, authorization level, operations and output. When you are reading in these documents what they stand for, they are available on their website. You see how they have incorporated all these rules, recognized worldwide, claiming their independency from Switzerland. The grounds their headquarters are on, are independent from the country. It also states their immunity. It also states they are above all worldly rules. Nobody can touch them, they have complete immunity. So, they have a complete immunity from everything on earth. Furthermore, they have their own police service, so you can't just go in yelling, "You bastards," or something of the sort, because you won't get away with it. To be concise, it's a fully recognized, immune state, beyond the grasp of any rules, inviolable. This institute was also the location during World War I and before, in which the so-called enemies, the Nazis and their allies met up, in which they traded gold raided from Jewish people of states or other people. BIS is a club in which they are all friends. And these headquarters maintain the monetary system as it is and assures the amount of currency. At the so-called bottom of the pyramid, where all value is located at the bottom, means real life there where people live, where the earth is, nature. And the real value at the bottom of the pyramid is being extorted. They do this by using the financial system. Under the central bank, the BIS, we find the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. People can read about this in the newspapers, and the World Bank. These two institutes often help countries when needed. What they really do is create debt in these countries in such a way that they will never be able to pay it off. They actually calculate the amount needed in order to ensure this fact, enabling them to increase the grip they have on a country or continent such as Africa, which is rich in resources, very rich. Through their connections with friends, multinationals, they can extort the value from the countries by allowing them to pay in kind, resources for the debt they'll never be able to resolve.
So, they pay with labor, slave labor you could say, I suppose.
Yes, and the only requirement is buying off the top within such a country. Blackmail them with children, or severance pay, you name it, you buy them off and then you own them. So, this was the first layer under BIS, the World Bank and IMF. The next layer would be the central banks. Again, all civil organizations, independent from governmental organizations, amongst which, nowadays, we have the Central Bank of Europe. We used to also have the national banks in this layer, but they have been demoted to being side offices of the Central Bank of Europe.
Where do we find the city in this story?
You mean the city of London? This is also a free state.
As in Vatican City?
Yes, Vatican City. There is also such a place in Washington. There are many free states in the world at the same level, like the BIS in Basel. Vatican Bank in Vatican City is an example of such a free state. When we take the City of London, and we can speak of one of the biggest financial cores of the world, which for example determines the gold rate. They manipulate the gold rate on a daily basis, so they are able to fill people with money or empty them altogether. This makes London City a core player in the financial world. They are a very important mechanism in the bigger scheme, when we are talking about the pyramid, because we were talking about the structure of the BIS in Basel, then IMF and World Bank, then the central banks like the Federal Reserve in America and others. Then the regular banks, but also stock market centers. We are now talking about these free states with immunity from everyone. Free states where nothing and no one can do anything against this, included the people working for these institutes. They also got immunity.
Are they on the same level as BIS?
No, BIS delegates the execution of instructions to the others, the headquarter of the headquarters. And from out of BIS all instructions are entered and set to all the layers below.
All right, so also to the city.
Yes, indeed. They are all instructed from the top. So, to pick up from the regular banks we just mentioned, under them we find the multinationals, and then below we find the governments. And finally under them we find ourselves, the people, the real life. And one of the mechanisms they use, something we have accepted as normal, is the interest rate. In our society, money is created from a contract, based on debt. So, let us take this piece of paper. You go to the bank, we all are familiar with this principle, and ask for a loan or a mortgage, and you put your signature. The moment you do this, they create a debt on one side on your bank account and a credit on the other side. The credit goes to whatever you were trying to buy, car, house, etc. The debt is yours from now on, so out of nowhere they digitally created money. That's how they create all the money in the world, based on debt. That is only one part. This is an economy based on debt. But there's also a component that you could call usage costs, interest rates. Then in school with economics they teach you that there are savings on the opposite because someone worked really hard for it. So, it makes sense that he receives something for the money he lends to someone else. Well, all of that isn't true. But what it is about is that this interest rate of 5% a year on average was not created in the contract of debt. This means they have to take the interest out of some other contract, which causes the start of the global shortage, leading to competition all over the world and virtually creates all misery we experience amongst the people, in society. There is a continuous stream of this 5% interest rate that is taken from the bottom of the pyramid and whisked away to the top capital. When we do the math, 5 times 10 years. After 10 years it is 50%, after 20 years 100%. The shortages just keep increasing. To solve this they keep creating debt contract based on debt contract worldwide in all the layers, people, government, companies, etc. Debt on debt, to cover the holes they whisked away 5% leaves. They are sucking the real value, resources, out of the world, like a bunch of vampires. That is what it is. In 20 years, they already stole 100% of the real value. This is what causes the national debts to increase. You will see everywhere, with individuals, that those debts keep growing. Then reports start showing up, like Oxfam Novib, after a global research did show that 8 people own as much as half the people in this world. How is that possible? It's not just speculation, it's the interest rate that takes the real actual value and adds it to the capital at the top. Last thing about this pyramid, you have rules, laws, armies, police services, fiscal services, name them. You have all these rules and laws and organizations on the other side, that ensure the bottom layer, real life, stays where it is, to make sure they don't end up with 7 million in the top. They don't want that, so it's tightly closed. As long as people don't realize how this works, how they're deceived, how they're being robbed, how the real value, their value, is taken away from them to enrich the rich even further, as long as people don't see this, as long as they are not aware, nothing will change. Then I am talking about the old world, because all misery on earth is a business model. Syria is a business model. It is about resources and some other interests. All of that is being orchestrated by one organization, the top of the pyramid, and delegated through them.
As you said earlier, follow the money, because eventually that is what it's all about.
Yes, very much so. So when you see how this value extraction, I've brought an article from NOS, Dutch news channel, which anyone can Google. If you Google this, gas prices increase inflation. Apart from the fact that the title is already incorrect, it is very interesting to read. The article is from February 9, 2017. Most of the things they are describing is a distortion of the truth. Because if the prices of gas increase, it does not mean that it actually is more cost. No, it means our salary is worth less. Our currency is being depreciated, purchasing power decreases. That is what inflation is. So, what is found to be very remarkable is the nuggets of truth we do get from them, even though it is from NOS. Because it states, with the adjusted inflation rate of 1.6%, the Netherlands are up to speed again with the European inflation, which averages 1.8% a year. On average, your salary is worth 1.8% a year less, which decreases our purchasing power yearly. This is exactly why in the past one single person with a good job could sustain the entire family and two full-timers can hardly make ends meet and are being trapped in a crisis. Because 1.2 million people in the Netherlands are in debt and won't get out of it anymore. It's not some wild tale. And then the important part, the European Central Bank, you know the one on the top of the pyramid, has tried for the last 2 years, by use of policies for low interest rate and continuous money printing, they create 80 billion of new money every month, using contracts based on debt contracts to increase the inflation within the Eurozone to the desired level of almost 2% per year. Hence, they are stealing 2% a year of our labor and time of production which we are receiving a salary for. They are consciously stealing 2% a year and then they say the prices are increasing. That is a blatant lie. Our money is depreciated. That is what they are doing. So next to the interest rate, we find to be normal, is inflation another way, and inflation is theft. So they extract value in multiple ways. Now we are talking about the financial mechanism the elite uses to extort value, through a financial monetary system, an economic system. They do so through the banks. The banks being the key to this process. We are talking about BSN, Citizen Service Number. I sometimes say, service. I think is it a citizen service number or a citizen slavery number? If people realize where we find ourselves and see we are in a rat race of competition and scarcity, they should research the financial system that only services to better the rich and keep the poor miserable. Interest, a take-home message, interest. According to statistics calculated by economists, is paid by 80% of the people during their entire lifetime. 10% receives some interest and pays some, and the other 10% only receives interest. So this already illustrates the problem at hand. The main portion of humans pays the system their entire lives, and a small portion takes from the system. National debt, over the last 30 years we pay 13 billion in interest per year, for national debt. From the taxes paid by citizens, 13 billion of this created money goes to privately owned banks. This again based on money, created out of nothing, with a contract of debt in which our state happily engages. The government happily plays along and pays the privately owned banks the usage fees. If we would keep this 13 billion a year, average over 30 years, we would not need to economize anymore. So when people realize this seemingly innocent interest rate is actually the big corrupter causing all the trouble. Moreover, when the Catholics were still ruling Europe, interest rates were illegal and punishable by death. The death penalty for charging interest. It is a biggie in holy books as it is described.
It is actually still illegal.
Yes, Islamic banking. Unfortunately, nowadays several new calculation models are established which is also a form of interest charging. But the pure Islamic banking was the last to stay away from charging interest. The funny thing about Islamic banking is that 50% of the people are Islamic at all. It is a purely ethical, morally, based on principle decisions to bank without interest rates. These people are aware of the damage it causes.
Meanwhile politicians look away. I understood the Court of Audit does not even have access to what ECB does.
No. They are privately owned organizations and have so much authority and protection that they don't require anything at all.
Then what is the Court of Auditors and the government doing in our names?
These kinds of institutions serve the political system. For example, the elections, they calculated budgets of parties and their plans. You could use it for good, but you can also use it to serve certain agendas. During the election period, they calculated things in such a way to show how extremely well we were all doing. Things are going better, new jobs, all things to show how amazing things are now. As soon as the elections are done and over with, we will start hearing about economizing once again.
However, the Court of Audit doesn't even have access to data of banks. They have no right to it.
Well, officially, companies do have yearly reports, but you are talking about a level in which decisions are made that are not made public.
Exactly.
Yes, you are right. But that is true for BIS. There is another mechanism, well, many others. You've got ESM, European Stability Mechanism. The House of Representatives, I think in 2012, gave 100 votes to create this. ESM is an institute that is again fully protected. Employees are indemnified, they are immune. The organization is allowed to do what they want, nothing is publicly available, as an entity is sort of a free state. This organization, empowered by the representatives, ministers, the government, was initially made to save countries which soon became banks instead. And this mechanism, the ESM mechanism, ensures that within 7 days, any required amount of money, be it 10 billion or 100 billion, has to be delivered by the Netherlands within 7 days. So if ESM decides it wants to save, for example, Greece, and they need money, they can assign Germany, the government in the Netherlands gives us 10 billion. Then that has to be sent within 7 days to ESM so they can execute their program to save, in this case, banks. So if we take Greece as an example, a lot of money has been sent through ESM, not even 5% has actually arrived in Greece. Most of it has directly gone through Greece to German, French and Dutch banks. They were all betting on Greece and made sure they could buy themselves out of stocks on Greece. So they have freed themselves through these mechanisms. And all that money is coming from us, from our tax money and national debt and so on. All these mechanisms, what we are talking about now, ensure we remain where we are and impoverish more and of course the rich getting richer.
So, that is where you find your task to inform the people.
Yes, that is why we currently give lectures in the Netherlands and Belgium. That is not just me but also colleagues. We are slowly arriving at how to solve this part.
Indeed, yes.
Because it is all fun. Well, it isn't really fun, but when you get to the bottom of how this world functions, the world I found myself in, and how it still bulldozes over everything, making the world worse and worse with all its programs and agendas. All business models, that includes vaccinations, all of a sudden, a pandemic arises. And the Dutch run to their doctor to get their shots, not to get sick.
That is getting less, by the way.
Yes, fortunately there is a tendency downward. I remember this other not even existing pandemic. With the former minister Klink, who later had to, after everybody got swine flu or avian flu vaccinations. Of some sort, anyway, very scary.
H1N1 or something.
Yes, and it turns out he still had many surplus vaccines. And it had to be processed through highly chemical disposal mechanisms. Because of the hazard it formed to all life, to nature. But shooting it into people was not a problem, of course. Anything else was not done, because it was life-threatening. However, that is just a business model, looking at the stocks, after the pandemic, of pharmaceutical industry in the months afterwards. Well, they had peak months. They had billions in extra profit. So, multinationals also play a key role in this game. You can determine this, not just me. Many academics have been reporting this as well. The multinationals and banks have become the dominant players in this world. On this earth. They use all these systems and mechanisms we just mentioned, the free states. That is very important, because we granted them the required immunity. It is the ideal situation for psychopaths. Like a father saying to his child, do whatever you want, I'll take care of it. In a way, it all boils down to that. They get away with anything. It's the world's biggest villain's wet dream they have created. That is what leaves us in the situation we are in now. Brussels currently dictates over 80% of what happens in the Netherlands. There are currently all sorts of campaigning to get everybody to vote, which is to make you agree with the current system.
And to instill the illusion that we live in a democracy.
To make one feel like they have contributed to the democracy and real change is about to happen. But if people are looking back at the last 40 years, what has actually changed? Which of the political topics have actually made a change in the campaign?
It's the mask they are wearing that changes, the core remains.
Because nothing of the people who are dedicating themselves to these parties. They are decent people that stand for their principles and do want to make a change. However, as soon as the coalition has to be formed, they are sworn in not on the people, but on the higher powers. For example, in this case, the king. That is where the change lies. That doesn't take many words. If you look at how ministers rule the country and how things only worsen for most of us, except for a few. And you also look at the political careers of these people and where they end up. I end up thinking, okay. The literal meaning of minister is servant. But who are you serving if I look at the pattern of your career during your service but also afterwards? I mean Minister De Jager used to be Minister of Finance during the period of the ESM approval. I don't see him walking around as postman. I know he has a top position in that world now. I don't begrudge him that position. But it does tell you something. It tells you something. Had it been only one case, you would have been, well, okay, such can happen, but it follows a pattern. You see a small group of people. That's why I call the governments puppets, and therefore they are also the connections between us and the powers. They are playing their role. They sell a part of themselves, otherwise we would not see this pattern. Then we would actually see the promises during the campaigns, after the elections being fulfilled. Look at all the election programs. Who says we need to completely change the economic, financial, monetary system? That we need to get rid of the banks as we know them currently. I found one. But if we talk about the major players who are on stage now, because even Forum for Democracy can count themselves lucky if they manage only one office, let alone the political parties you really expect something from, like big changes, They are under the radar and they even do not come to the light. While we see the citizen initiatives who have a very pure program that will really serve us in there, which is what it is all about.
And having potential?
And do have the potential, absolutely. So the movement of the people is there, from out of a citizen movement, you could say. I think one of the parties participating the elections, which actually carries that name in my view, it is called burgerbedging. Well, if you see those programs, I think, wow, they should have those 140, 150 government offices.
They don't get any attention.
Then we'd have real representation of the wish of the people and the system would actually serve us. A system for all of us. But that doesn't happen. Why? The current powers don't allow it and manipulate everything in such a way that nothing will fundamentally change.
Using the media. Because they don't get any attention in the mainstream. People don't even know these parties exist, which is obviously a serious matter.
It is only locally, here and here, a bit of this and a bit of that. They don't have the means to break through. You don't only need support, you also need money. You need connections to get into the mainstream. I've heard that over 18 million people have watched that first interview. In the meantime, they have tried to do it to me. To take me down and to try to prove that I am a liar, a dreamer, and just mention the whole range of whatever you can make up in order to deny the truth. Because I am telling the truth. Hello. I was just a top criminal, yes. How bad do you want me to tell myself that I was bad? How much more do people need to really see what is happening here on Earth? Because if we once have to throw it all out because people stay where they are, that's the problem, the good ones. Not the bad ones, there are only a few. The bad guys just do their thing. But it's about the good people, worldwide, who do nothing, for a very long time. World, wake up. To your research, organ trafficking. Children. No one is talking about his. Nobody is taking action. How much shit do you still need to get from me? Spread around that I am a liar. Go and look in the mirror. Who is lying here? You. It is you. You don't want to see the world as it is.